It was late June, and the summer heat in Manhattan clung to the city like a weighted blanket. From the wide windows of the Astoria Grand Ballroom, one could see the shimmering pavement stretching all the way to Central Park. Inside, the echo of laughter and polite conversation formed a backdrop to one of New York's most anticipated charity galas, where art and affluence converged. For the Duke of Wiltshire, who had only recently relocated to the city, evenings like this were rare and often bittersweet. Edward Levingston, known among the elite as the Duke, was a man whose tailored suits barely concealed the quiet sorrow that clung to him. He was greeted by business partners and acquaintances, but his mind was drawn into an undertow of memories. There had been a time when his daughter Charlotte would have fit seamlessly into this crowd, her vivacious spirit turning every event into something meaningful. As the Duke wandered through the crowd, lost in thought, something caught his eye, a glimmer of silver and blue. By the bar stood a young woman, perhaps 20, her auburn hair swept gracefully into a low bun. She wore a simple black dress that accentuated the delicate necklace around her throat. The pendant, a small blue stone set in twisted silver, glowed under the ballroom lights. The Duke's heart stuttered. It was impossible. He pressed closer, eyes fixed. That necklace had disappeared the day Charlotte was lost. He was sure of it. He halted behind the girl, unsteady. "Where did you get that necklace?" His voice was lower than intended, colored by disbelief. She turned, startled, her eyes wide. Sorry?" He tried to soften his tone, but the shock had stripped him of decorum. "That necklace belonged to my daughter," he said, barely above a whisper. The surrounding chatter faded as those nearby sensed something amiss. The young woman instinctively touched the pendant. "It was a gift," she replied, voice trembling slightly. "I don't know what you mean." Edward steadied himself. "May I ask your name?" "Lily," she replied quietly. "Lily Spencer." The Duke nodded, searching her face for any trace of deception. "Lily, I realize this is strange, but that necklace, it's not just any piece. It's unique. My daughter wore it every day until—" He paused, memories swirling, the pain evident in his gaze. Lily's eyes softened. "I'm sorry. I didn't know it was special to anyone else." She looked down. "After my family lost our home, we found some old things left behind in a box. This necklace was among them. I kept it. It made me feel safe somehow." Edward felt unmoored. The words "lost our home" hit close, another reminder of the unpredictability of life. "Where was your home?" She hesitated. "A small town in upstate New York. My father worked for the estate there before everything changed." Could it be? The Duke's estate had once provided employment for dozens in the region. "Which estate?" he pressed, voice thick. Lily caught his stare. "Wiltshire Manor." The air between them thickened. The last time he'd visited Wiltshire Manor had been the day Charlotte disappeared. A storm had swept through, the police uprooting every inch of land in search of clues. He still remembered the ache of helplessness, the searchers' flashlights bouncing between old curtains and battered stone. He drew a shaky breath, glancing at her. "That was my home, before I left England and moved here." Now things began to make sense, at least partially. The staff had boxed up relics Charlotte had cherished, sent them to charity or lost to the shuffle of relocations. How had a piece so personal ended up here? Lily smiled softly. "I'm sorry about your daughter," she said. "Was she like me?" Edward's throat tightened. "She was spirited, brilliant. She loved to ask questions, loved this city, New York, just as much as she loved Wiltshire." He paused, considering. "Would you mind if we talked more somewhere quieter?" They stepped out onto the terrace, the city lights twinkling below. The hum of taxis and distant laughter mingled with the cool night air. Lily adjusted her dress, suddenly self-conscious. "I didn't mean to interrupt your evening," she offered, a tentative gesture of comfort. The Duke shook his head. "Not at all. In truth, you've brought me closer to something I thought was lost forever." Conversation flowed more naturally now. Lily described growing up in Wiltshire, the rituals of summer picnics, the challenges her family faced after the estate changed hands. Edward listened closely, each detail echoing his own experiences, yet sharply distinct. The city around them faded into quiet, replaced by shared textures of memory and resilience. After a long pause, Edward asked the question that had haunted him all evening. "Did anyone ever mention Charlotte to you?" Lily nodded. "The staff used to speak about her, how she'd organize games, create missions for the children." Her eyes sparkled at the recollection. "They said she left a diary somewhere in the manor. My father would swear it was hidden away, waiting for someone to find." Edward smiled for the first time that night, the pain and hope tugging in equal measure. Charlotte loved stories. Maybe that's why I came tonight, to try and remember that part of her. Lily reached into her bag, pulling out a battered notebook, its edges worn. "Is this hers? I found it with the necklace." He took the diary with a trembling hand. The cover was familiar, a blue scrap of leather stitched by hand. He opened it, reading the first line in his daughter's distinctive script: "To whomever finds this, know that you are loved." Neither spoke for a long moment. The city hummed around them, indifferent and beautiful. For the Duke, grief mingled with gratitude. He had found not only a piece of Charlotte, but also a new connection, a link between past and present, sorrow and healing. As the evening wound down, Edward thanked Lily. They made plans to meet again, determined to uncover the missing threads together. The necklace remained where it was, a symbol now shared, suspended between two stories, one ending, another beginning. Thus began a journey neither had anticipated, one shaped by the details of memory, the unpredictable paths of kindness, and the possibility that even lost things can bind strangers together. The first light of morning filtered through the tall windows of Edward's apartment, casting geometric patterns on the hardwood floor. Manhattan was waking up, the rhythmic sound of horns and distant sirens blending with the murmur of people starting their routines. After the gala, sleep had been brief, troubled by images of Charlotte and the haunted look in Lily's eyes. The necklace, a fragile bridge between eras, now lay atop his oak desk, glinting with enigmatic promise. Edward barely touched his coffee as he reread the lines in Charlotte's diary. The memories came back in flashes: laughter on the steps of Wiltshire Manor, the scent of her favorite perfume, the way she'd scrawl ideas just before bedtime. His hands trembled. He was weathered, practiced in sorrow, but this new uncertainty felt raw, unfinished. He was deep in thought when his phone buzzed. A message glowed on screen. "Mr. Livingston, I'm downstairs. Lily." He took a slow breath, gathering himself, and went down to meet her. The doorman, used to discreet comings and goings, nodded silently as Lily entered. Her presence was quieter today, as if the gravity of their discovery had settled overnight. "Good morning," she greeted. Her voice was tentative but sincere. "I couldn't stop thinking about last night." Edward nodded. "Neither could I. Please, sit." She took her place at the kitchen table, sunlight making her hair a soft halo. He slid the diary across to her. "Have you read it? There might be clues, not just about Charlotte, but how things ended up the way they did." Lily shook her head. It felt too private, too precious. He smiled faintly. "Charlotte would want it read. She loved audiences, even for her secrets." With that gentle permission, Lily opened the diary, pages filled with a teenager's sprawling script and doodles of flowers and stars. Together, they spent nearly 2 hours reading aloud, trading paragraphs, pausing to analyze stray references to the old chest, Mrs. Boyle's garden, and on that rainy Tuesday when lightning hit the east wing. Slowly, a picture emerged, not only of Charlotte's daily life, but also of her anxieties and hopes during the months before she disappeared. "Look at this," Lily said, pointing to a passage. "She mentioned a locket. She called it her second treasure. Do you know what happened to it?" Edward shook his head, lost in deliberation. "She had a gold locket as a child, but I haven't seen it in years." A knock interrupted them, a courier delivering a small package from Wiltshire Manor. Edward recognized the return address, the estate supervisor, Mr. Carswell. Inside the brown wrapping was an envelope stuffed with old photographs, yellowed at the edges but lovingly preserved. Flipping through them, Edward paused on an image of Charlotte, wild-haired in the garden, a necklace, this necklace clearly visible. Lily leaned closer. "That's the garden I remember. But who's that beside her?" A boy with dark hair, face obscured by bright sunlight. Edward furrowed his brow. That must be Sam, one of the gardener's sons. They were inseparable until the last year we lived in England. Lily's finger traced the edge of the photograph. "Maybe Sam knows something. Do you keep in touch?" "Not for years." Edward's voice was regretful. "After Charlotte vanished, everyone spread apart." The conversation drifted to Lily's childhood, her memories at the manor, her father's stories of hard winters and grand holiday parties. She described the contrast when they moved to the city, the cramped apartment, finding comfort in small objects lost from grander times, and how the necklace became a kind of talisman. "I wore it to every exam, every difficult interview," Lily admitted. "It was like a piece of courage I could carry." Edward's smile was full of melancholy pride. That's exactly what it was for Charlotte, too. An idea took root as they pieced together the clues. "What if Sam moved here?" Lily suggested. "Lots of English families settled in the US after the manor downsized." Edward nodded. "I could have a private investigator look, a man I trust, discreet and experienced with this sort of thing." Feeling a swell of cautious hope, they agreed to search for Sam and to revisit places from Lily's early life for more clues. "There's a storage unit in Queens," Lily recalled. "My dad put a few boxes there after the move. We could go today." The drive to Queens took them out of Manhattan's ordered grid and into the cacophony of outer boroughs, with mechanic shops, laundromats, and pizza places lining the wide streets. The storage facility was nondescript, concrete walls and rows of metal doors, the scent of motor oil heavy in the air. Inside, Lily struggled momentarily with the lock. They rummaged through boxes, photo albums, porcelain knickknacks, handwritten letters, and finally, a faded wooden chest. At the bottom was a velvet pouch. She unfastened it. Inside was a small gold locket, cold and unfamiliar to Lily, but immediately familiar to Edward. He opened it to find a photo of Charlotte on one side, and her initials etched delicately on the other. Emotion caught in his throat. She must have left this behind for a reason. Beneath the locket was a folded note in Charlotte's handwriting. "If you found this, maybe you need it more than I do. Look for the garden at the end of Hudson Lane." "Hudson Lane?" Lily repeated. "That's my old street here in New York." The day was fading as they drove to the quiet side street, lined with brownstone homes and willow trees, bent in afternoon light. At the end was a small locked park, a vestige of when the city prized green spaces as private retreats. Edward's pulse quickened as they approached the gate. Inside, the air felt cool and untouched by the city's bustle. In a shaded corner under an old willow, Lily found a flat stone inscribed merely with the initials C.L. "Did Charlotte ever visit New York?" Lily asked softly. Edward shook his head. "Not that I know of, but She wrote letters to friends here. She dreamed of studying in the US. They knelt by the stone, tracing the letters. Around them the city's noise melted away, replaced by the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant sound of children playing. Loss mingled with wonder. The past reached into the present, offering both questions and comfort. As the sun set, Lily turned to Edward. "I feel like we're just beginning to understand her story." Edward nodded, gratitude and sorrow knit tightly together. "All these years, I only saw what I lost. Now, for the first time, I see what might have been, what might still be, with your help." They left the garden in silence, carrying the new clues close to their hearts. Night settled over Manhattan, a city of secrets and second chances, and the mystery of the necklace drew them onward, promising that wherever Charlotte's path had led, there was still more to uncover. Days passed after their visit to Hudson Lane, and Manhattan was caught between late spring rains and bursts of sunlight. The world outside Edward's window seemed both hopeful and heavy, as if the city itself mirrored the way grief can coexist with the promise of new beginnings. He sat in his study, open boxes of belongings and old letters spread across the desk, a map of unanswered questions. The garden stone, the locket, and Charlotte's diary formed a constellation the Duke found himself studying like a detective. Meanwhile, Lily was adjusting to a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. Each evening after work, she walked to the edges of old neighborhoods, asking elderly residents about Charlotte and Sam, digging through layers of local memory. She collected fragments, rumors, half-remembered stories about a group of children who often played in the city parks, led by a fearless British girl and a quiet boy with sad eyes. Lily met Edward each morning at a small coffee shop near Bryant Park. There, plans took shape between conversations and shared silences. Edward noticed a subtle change in Lily. Her questions were sharper, her posture more assured. She was emerging from her own history, driven by Charlotte's story. One Wednesday, a new clue appeared. Edward received a letter at his apartment, unsigned but containing a single page from a school report written years ago. Charlotte Levingston, talented, curious, generous, last seen at Reginald Park, May 7th. Edward's hands trembled as he reread the date. May 7th was the anniversary of Charlotte's disappearance, a day forever marked by confusion and dashed hopes. He folded the report and put it next to the diary, then called Lily. "We need to talk to Sam," he said, voice urgent. They spent hours searching through online records and old contact books. Lily finally found a possible lead, Samuel Brooks, son of the Wiltshire Manor gardener. Now working in Brooklyn as an archivist for a historical library, Edward felt a jolt of both fear and anticipation. A rainy afternoon found the duo walking into the Brooklyn Historical Library, a stately old building overseen by Sam himself. He was older now, with streaks of grey in his hair, but Lily recognized the sadness in his eyes. Edward approached with caution. Sam hesitated, but his posture softened when he saw the necklace in Edward's hand. "Do you remember this?" Edward asked. Sam stared at the pendant, emotion flickering on his face. "Charlotte's," he whispered. "She used to say it held all her secrets. I always hoped someone would find it." They sat together in Sam's office, the city's sounds muffled by old stone walls. Conversation unfolded in careful layers. Sam told them how Charlotte became a legend among the manor kids, organizing treasure hunts and solving puzzles that led to hidden corners of the estate. She was always searching for answers, driven by a restless energy and an affection for her friends. The last summer they spent together was clouded by rumors of a family argument, a strange visitor to the estate, and Charlotte's increasing absences. "I thought her disappearance might have something to do with that visitor," Sam admitted. "A man with a foreign accent. He met with your staff, Edward. and I overheard heated conversations about inheritance, debts, and family secrets. Edward's jaw tightened. The Duke's family had weathered scandals before, but this felt personal, as though secrets had been hidden even from him. Lily's phone buzzed, a message from her father. He remembered the man too, a distant relative perhaps, who claimed to own a part of the estate. Stories flooded the room. Land sold behind closed doors, old staff dismissed without warning, mysterious packages sent abroad. Edward turned to Sam. "What happened the day Charlotte vanished?" Sam's face shadowed. "She called me early, asked me to meet her at Reginald Park with a box of keepsakes. She said she'd discovered something important, a family secret that might explain everything. But when I arrived, the storm had already started. I never saw her again." Silence settled, heavy with regret. The city beyond the walls pressed in, new and unyielding. Lily stood and paced. "We need to recreate her route. Where exactly did she plan to go after the park? Can we trace her footsteps through old receipts, transport records, anything?" Edward agreed. They pored through stacks of receipts and travel logs, examining every subway route Charlotte might have taken. But there was little. One receipt for a bookstore near the river, a Metrocard with a single ride loaded on May 7th, a ticket stub for a children's play at a theatre in Soho. At home that night, Edward stared at the ticket stub, memories swirling. Charlotte loved theatre, especially stories with strong protagonists and unexpected endings. He remembered reading her favourite line, "Not all answers come when we want them. Some wait in the wings for hope to call them forth." He called Lily. "Let's go to the theatre tomorrow. Maybe someone remembers her." The next day they visited the old playhouse, walls covered with posters from past performances. The box office attendant, an older woman with smiling eyes, remembered Charlotte. She was here with a friend. He talked about gardens. She wanted to see the backstage. Edward and Lily asked to see the records. The manager found an old registration book, Charlotte Levingston, guest of Sam Brooks, May 7th. Lily clasped Edward's hand. She was looking for something hidden in plain sight. In the dim light of the theatre, Edward felt a new sense of urgency. The clues pointed to secrets layered beneath everyday objects. A garden stone, a pendant, a diary. They returned home late, determined not to rest until every question found its answer. Days turned into evenings as they traced Charlotte's last journey. Through old parks full of memories, theatres alive with echoes, and conversations with people touched by Charlotte's kindness, the mystery deepened. Each clue pulled Lily and Edward further into the web, forcing them to confront the unfinished stories in their own lives. Yet for the first time, both felt they were moving closer, not just to the truth, but to a renewal of hope. Every step forward was a step out of grief and isolation, a shared journey that transformed the pain of the past into purpose for the future. Night fell on Manhattan, rain streaking the windows, city lights blurring into constellations. In Edward's study, the necklace glimmered, a promise that secrets, once uncovered, could bind people together across years and continents. And so, the mystery continued, more tangled and compelling with every truth revealed, echoing in the hearts of those determined to solve it. The city was restless that week, thunderstorms turning day into twilight, the skyline shrouded in racing clouds and neon reflections. For Edward and Lily, the world had narrowed to a list of names, photographs spread across Edward's apartment table, and the ceaseless pursuit of leads that seemed to vanish as quickly as they appeared. Each morning began with a review of fresh evidence: Charlotte's diary, the locket, the garden stone, ticket stubs and long-forgotten receipts. Now there was a new item, a crumpled letter Edward found, wedged in the back of an old book from Wiltshire Manor's library, marked, "For Charlotte, if you need me." Lily's curiosity burned brighter than ever. "Who would leave a message for your daughter and hide it away like this?" she asked, running her fingers over the trembling handwriting. "It's from Eleanor Boyle," Edward said, recognition flickering in his eyes. She was the housekeeper, loyal to a fault. She knew more about the estate than anyone. Lily proposed they visit Eleanor, now living in the Bronx. The trip exposed them to another facet of the city, a community of immigrants, brownstones pressed together, and endless blocks pulsing with city life. Eleanor welcomed them into her tiny apartment, walls lined with faded photographs and trinkets from a life spent in service to the manor. Over teacups and shortbread, Eleanor relived stories of Charlotte's restless intellect, her tendency to probe beneath the surface, and the secrets the house tried and failed to keep. "There was someone watching the estate that last spring," Eleanor whispered. "I saw him, an unfamiliar face at the garden fence, always gone before I could warn anyone. Charlotte was sure she knew him. She called him the man in the grey coat." As she recounted details, Edward and Lily pieced together a timeline. The man arrived close to the date of the estate's financial troubles. Coincidence or not, everyone familiar with the house remembered a rising tension, arguments behind closed doors, and changes in Charlotte's mood. Eleanor provided a crucial detail. Charlotte's last message to her was to protect what can't be seen. The pressure mounted that day. Edward realized that every adult in Charlotte's orbit, staff, friends, family, had carried guilt, feeling each could have done something more or noticed something sooner. Lily saw how the wounds of loss shaped everyone differently, Edward with stoic silence, Eleanor with nostalgia, herself with restless energy for answers. Back in Manhattan, rain ricocheted off the glass as Edward called Sam Brooks to recount Eleanor's memories. Sam, shaken, remembered the grey-coated stranger too. He would watch the children play from across the road, disappearing when approached, once even photographed the group and vanished into the crowd. Fueled by instinct, Edward contacted a retired police detective, Detective Morris, who had investigated the original disappearance, but had retired disheartened by the lack of progress. Morris invited them to a diner in Queens, where New York's diversity was evident in the polyglot chatter and the aroma of strong coffee. Morris spread a box of old case files on the Formica table, interviews with guests from the theatre, written statements from staff, grainy photographs from the estate's security cameras. One photograph jolted Lily. It showed Charlotte speaking animatedly to a man partly out of frame, his face obscured by rain and poor light. Only a wristwatch, distinctive and old-fashioned, was clearly visible. "That watch belonged to my Uncle Theo," Edward murmured, a new distress breaking through. But Theo had died years ago in a car accident. The sighting confused the timeline, raising questions. Had someone impersonated Theo? Was the watch stolen, or was it just a coincidence? Lily linked that detail to something from the diary, a veiled reference to family debts repaid in the wrong way and trust broken beneath the willow tree. The two pored over maps, receipts, and the meticulous notes Charlotte had kept of names, places, and times. By week's end, exhaustion wore on both of them. Tensions flared, Lily frustrated by bureaucratic delays at the old theatre, Edward insisting on caution after a threatening note was slipped under his door, warning him to let sleeping ghosts lie. They withdrew into themselves, cracks forming in their alliance. Lily spent evenings alone walking beneath city lights, confronting her own memories of instability, and wondering if her drive to solve Charlotte's disappearance was truly selfless, or an attempt to rewrite her own narrative of loss. Edward took refuge in his study, reliving every interaction with Charlotte, scrutinizing old letters for clues and finding only the ache of regret. He called his lawyer to question estate records and family business ties, reopening wounds and waking tensions with distant relatives. A breakthrough arrived from Sam. He found a letter, unopened, addressed to Charlotte from someone named R.H., a name unfamiliar to both Edward and Lily. The letter contained fragmented apologies, cryptic remarks about owing her the truth, and a postscript: "If you find the necklace, look beneath the willow roots." Edward and Lily traced the clue to the Hudson Lane garden late that evening. The city dampened by fresh rain, they dug beneath the willow tree, hands trembling, until they unearthed a small tin box. Inside was a photograph, a family picnic, Charlotte beaming, the man in the grey coat standing apart, watching her. Beneath the photograph, a pressed sprig of lavender and a slip of paper. "I hid what you couldn't see, forgive me." They stood in the dark, understanding that the mystery was even deeper and more personal than they had imagined. A web of debts, betrayals, and broken promises entangled the past. The pursuit of answers had changed them all. As dawn crept over the city, Edward and Lily reconciled their differences, bound now not only by the search for Charlotte, but by an understanding of their own wounds. They stood together in the quiet, the city awakening around them, determined to face the final truths, no matter how painful. For in every family, every city, every heart, secrets were a currency. And sometimes the breaking point was what finally allowed the light to enter.